Welcome, friends, to another episode of Jack Amplified. I am your host, Michael Braithwaite, and every other week we come to you with some incredible guests that bravely share their lived experience with us around a variety of different topics. This week we have not one but two amazing guests for the price of one. Uh, Beautiful people who are going to share their experience, and we're going to have a great conversation. Of course, this month, as we're talking to you, is Pride Month. Awesome month, a beautiful month, and it started off today as we come to you. It's June 1st. Now, this won't drop on June 1st, but it's June 1st, and it is a beautiful day. What a way to start this month. I have had just absolute privilege over the years of working in a variety of different organizations that with a variety of different of young, vulnerable people. So I've seen firsthand what happens when we don't support 2S LGBTQ plus youth communities. I was in a community in York region where we had not one but two different surveys that showed young people from the community said, I don't feel safe in the spaces provided to me for housing and homelessness. People went amazing research and they put it on a shelf. And then where I was, we refused to do that. We said we need to forward. We need to provide a safe space for young people. And we did that. It was so cool. It was called Inclusion. And it was the first housing for 2S LGBTQ plus youth in York Region, supportive housing. It was very cool. It's been very successful. Now, in saying that, we went forward to find a house in the community at the time. And we said we would pay rent a year in advance in full, and we still took us 4 months because, let's face it, people, we know that both the fact that it was housing and affordable housing and the fact that people were looking at home for 2S LGBTQ plus youth, the stigma's still there. Right. And since we've been in that community, I'm saying I'm no longer with that organization, but since they've been in that community, they've been welcomed. It's been awesome. They have since bought that house. It's really, really cool. And probably 20 to 25 youth have gone through and got into permanent housing. It's been amazing. Why do I tell you this? Well, really, it is about building communities. Everything we do at Jack.org is about finding your community, and the 2S LGBTQ plus community is no different. We want to talk to young people and the way when you don't have that community, when you don't have the supports that fit your needs, how it can affect your mental health. We're going to talk about that and much, much more. But I'm going to stop babbling. I'm going to get to our guests, Jake and Ray, today. Jake, we'll start with you. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, what brings you to the podcast today, and Ray, we'll go over to you.
Yeah, my name's Jake. My pronouns are they, them, and I've been involved with Jack.org for a long time now, actually. And I'm a mental health advocate and um, dancer and performer.
Yeah, well, my name is Ray. I also use they, them pronouns. I've been friends with Jake for a long time now. I'm also a mental health advocate. I'm an activist, and I'm also a poet.
Awesome. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. You're both very talented people, I see. Unlike myself, so I want to talk to you a little bit. I can neither sing or dance. Well, I can. I just can't do it well. We often talk about the unique stressors that 2S LGBTQIA plus youth face. How does navigating your identity impact your mental health journey? And when did you realize you needed a community that understood that? That goes to both of you. You can jump in, bounce off each other, whatever works for you.
Yeah, I think my mental health journey kind of started um, when I was at my first year of university, and at the time I was dealing with a lot of anxiety around my future and questioning a lot of different things, and so it actually led me to take a semester off where I got really involved with Jack.org, and I came back home and really focused on getting mental health support for myself, and that's kind of when I became a mental health advocate and really passionate about, destigmatizing, the stigma around, anxiety and depression. But it actually wasn't until after university, until I was about 23 or 24, that I fully came to terms with my own identity as a queer person. And so like my mental health journey kind of started off with kind of this anxiety and depression that I was dealing with generally. And then as I came to terms with my own queer identity, kind of when I was 23, after struggling so long in silence when it came to my own mental health, but also in terms of, feeling so much shame about who I was. I think that was when I really realized and started to recognize how much my mental health journey was really impacted by my identity and also experiences that I'd had at a younger age, where I didn't realize at the time, you know bullying that I faced, teasing, that kind of started, as young as 8 years old. Um, I didn't realize how much of an impact that had on contributing to like the mental health kind of crisis that I experienced when I was in my second year of university. Um, and so I think when I think about the connection between someone's identity and how it relates to their mental health. I think for me, as a kid, not always feeling safe, not always feeling seen, and not always feeling like I could be myself, contributed to this anxiety that I felt of, you know, always being vigilant, always feeling like I needed to prove myself, prove my worth, and also just feeling like I had to kind of hide a part of who I was to the world. And so it's almost like I had my first mental health experience after university. And then as I came out, I started to do that work again, like understanding more about how my experiences as a kid had really impacted me. And I still think it's something that I'm kind of working to figure out and unpack. Um, but yeah, that was kind of a little bit about my journey.
Yeah, and then I would say for my journey with mental health, I think it started in high school. That's kind of when I went through a difficult time with anxiety and depression. I think and how that ties to identity. I'm also somebody who is neurodivergent. I feel like throughout the my experience of like adolescence and being in high school, I always felt a little bit like different than everybody else and also experienced some bullying that sometimes as someone who's autistic, I didn't fully clock what was bullying until later. And I'd go home and be like, well, maybe these things weren't being said with the best of intentions, and then always somehow feeling like I don't fully fit in. And I think that really intersects a lot with um the neurodivergence, the race, and then my feeling as someone who's trans, maybe not like having gender dysphoria or not feeling fully aligned with who I was, or not feeling like people could see me authentically. And then all of these different aspects of my identity intersecting to make me feel like so different from my peers around me created like this swirling storm inside of me of like depression, anxiety, and not going to school a lot of the times. And I really had to get help from a teacher actually who reached out to me and said like, hey, I feel like you might want to like seek support for your mental health. I feel like you seem like you're not doing so well. And I think being able to access like youth mental health programs where I'm from in BC and Vancouver was a great help for me. And then continuing that journey to where I am now, always being an advocate for mental health, creating spaces with like my peers, and being able to like open these conversations and acknowledge that mental health doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is so structural, it's so systemic, it's impacted by like who you are in the world, how the world sees you, and having the space to feel accepted for your authenticity is like a really important thing and a really big support. And appreciate being able to like come on and talk about that with the both of you today.
Awesome. And thank you both for having the courage to share your stories and your journey. As I mentioned, June is, of course, Pride Month. But listen, the work continues for the 11 months of the year. What does real meaningful support look like? And what has it looked like for you? Once kind of June is over and we're moving into July, what does it look like, that real meaningful support?
Yeah, I might start this off because I think it kind of ties off with what I was just saying. I think it means like giving queer youth and giving people like a safe space to share their stories and to be heard. Because I think a lot of the times, like for queer youth, especially if you are also like racialized or have oppressed in other ways, like the way that you are made to feel by society by maybe lack of representation or just like the lack of privilege is that your voice doesn't matter. You don't see people who look like you, or you just feel like you're the only person who feels like this in the world. It's like a very isolating and lonely feeling. So creating like these moments of like just maybe where you listen more than you speak, or you offer some support when you see someone like struggle or hesitate, and make youth feel like what your experience is, I wanna hear that. It matters, it's important, like, your identity, your existence, your authenticity is a gift to the world, and allowing them to feel, like, authentically witnessed in that way, I think makes a big difference. Like, for me growing up, it made such a huge difference. I think, in the work I do now, I can see the way that it's impacted, the folks that I work with as well, just to a lot of the times, the trans youth that I work with have told me, like, I don't feel like I have a space anywhere else where I can explore my questions of identity. Like, where if someone wants to, like, wear makeup for the first time or wear a binder, like, being able to just even explore, like, if I were to transition, if I were to do these things, like, what could that even look like? To explore, to be expansive in possibilities, and fostering that sense of identity, I think is a really great way to provide meaningful support for youth that they might not really be able to get, like, in the home or with peers or friends who are not queer. So I think that's like a really vital part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think, um, it's an interesting question too of, like, how much of it is performative versus, like, what is the actual action? And I think there's also, as Ray was saying, like, there's a difference between, like tolerating and making space for queer youth and actually celebrating and creating celebratory and affirming spaces for queer youth. And I hope that's something that we're doing, like, during Pride Month, but also something that we're doing all the time. um, and standing up against hate wherever we can, whether it's like walking down the street, in a school setting. There's so many small acts of resistance that are actually, really big acts that we should be doing on a day to day basis, and definitely not only during Pride Month.
Love that. Thank you, you both. Um, Now, I do, Jake, I want to ask you about your work at Jack.org. We focus on the peer-to-peer advocacy piece. Um, how have you seen peer-to-peer advocacy um, change the game for queer youth who might feel isolated in their schools or towns?
Yeah, I think as Ray was saying, like, representation and visibility is so incredibly important. Um, and so having the opportunity to, share stories like I used to, in my Jack Talk stories that talked about my own identity, as a queer person, being able to share those stories in spaces, where, people might not have, like, queer role models, whether that's like in the school or in their community. And that's definitely not something that I had access to, when I was growing up. And so just from being able to share those stories and then hearing students, that would come up to me afterwards, and we would be able to, like, have a conversation. And sometimes we would talk about, being queer. Sometimes we would talk about, like, how I really love oatmeal. And they would be like, I love oatmeal too. And I'm like, cool. But there's just kind of that underlying sense of kind of acceptance, and support. Um, and I also think, like, as Ray was saying too, representation is so important. And so having the opportunity to share, queer stories, but also ensuring that there's representation across race, across gender, across, all these different aspects of identity, because people need to see themselves represented in the people that they're hearing stories from. So, I can share stories that some people are going to resonate with, and other people won't. And I know lots of people, who felt like they saw a lot of queer role models when they were growing up, but a lot of them were white, and so they didn't feel like that was something that they would have access to. And so, I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind as well.
I mean, and who doesn't love oatmeal, right? I mean, I think if we took anything away from that, oatmeal's great. It's good for you. It's, fills you up.
Exactly.
No, thanks for that. And we say that all the time. You're so, both of you are so on point where, so this is why I don't get up and give mental health talks to a bunch of young people because it's about relatability,
Yeah.
right? So, um, not that there's nothing's there, and I learned this with my own kids. It was like what you can be saying can be full of wisdom, but it's just noise because how can you possibly understand,
Mm,
right? So if you're going through similar things, if we look alike, if we're in the same place in our lives, all those different things, right,
yeah.
really can open those doors. Going forward. Now, for both of you, what would you say to a young person out there who's struggling with their identity or mental health right now, but feels unsafe or unsure of how to reach out?
Yeah. Um, it's hard. Like I can think back to that time in my life, and um, yeah, like it was such a difficult time, and there's so much kind of going through your head. Um, I would say that there is an entire community of queer folks and allies that are out in the world right now that are so incredibly excited to meet you, to love you, to celebrate you in your fullest self expression, to witness your joy, to hold your hand when things are hard, and you will find us soon because we're everywhere. We're walking down the street, we're in community. We might be in your school and you might not even know it. Um, and if you haven't found us yet, know that we're cheering you on. We're cheering you on this podcast, and we're cheering for you loud. And I feel so grateful, and I'm so happy that Ray is on this podcast with me because I feel so grateful to have wonderful people um, like Ray that make me feel so affirmed and celebrated for who I am. And you are gonna find those people.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I also just want to add, the concept of queer time. I think a lot of queer folks go through like major life milestones later in life, especially like if you're still grappling with identity or exploring other things. So I want to say you're not behind. You have more time than you think. And even if you don't feel it, you matter more than it might seem at this time. Like just like Jake said, like even if you haven't found your community yet, we are out here. We are waiting for you. And no matter how like difficult or heavy things can feel, the grief that you navigate as a person who whose identities maybe not don't fit with what's expected in society, like you are so much more loved than you might know or feel at this time. And
Yeah.
yeah, there are so many queer people who want to hear your story, who want to hold you, who want to be expansive and like imagining different versions of the future with you. And even if it feels scary, just speaking about it or just existing as you are is so courageous, is stronger and more of a statement than you know. And yeah, I want to echo what Jake said. Like we love you. Like we literally love you.
Fantastic. What a positive message, too. We're now going to go to a section we call Talk the Talk. And so we hear a lot about allyship, like being an ally. There's passive allyship and then active.
Mm,
Can you help us understand what's the difference between the two and what actually kind of spurs action?
yeah.
Passive versus active allyship?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think passive allyship might, be more in line with something that's performative. Like you might feel inside, like, well, I'm not homophobic, I'm not racist, I'm not this and that. And that's good and great. And that is like being an ally passively. But I think being active means getting into the community, leaving your home, or if you have like different accessibility needs or different capacity needs, thinking like, what is realistic for you as an individual to make a contribution, whether it be showing up to a rally, whether it be like like supporting a friend who's going through a mental health crisis and maybe more engaging in mutual aid, whether it be just like engaging in conversations around the dinner table. Like there's so many like actions you can take that is more of an active role in allyship. It doesn't have to look one way, but maybe the first step could be really sitting down and thinking like what is feasible for you to do? What is that first step? Change doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to go from just, having a big passion and care to being like the most involved activist in the world. So maybe even starting by making a list or having a conversation with your friends and being like, this Pride Month, I want to like take 3 small steps. Like, what is something we could do together? Would you be willing to come with me to this event? Or would you be, like, willing to, like, check out this volunteer opportunity with me? So I think, taking that initial step to plan that out, imagine what it could look like, and then following through is, like, a really strong way to be active in your allyship.
Yeah. And I think too, like um your values aren't your values if you only, you know, speak up when it's easy to do so. So I see like passive as, okay, I'm only doing this when it's convenient. I'm only doing it when people are looking. I'm only doing it when I can get a badge of honor for what I'm doing. And active allyship means you're putting your own like identity and privilege on the line. You're putting it out there, and you're speaking up when those moments are hard. Like when you have that feeling in your stomach of like, that something is not okay, and you speak up anyway, despite the fact that, you might face repercussions. That's what being an active ally is. I also think, as Ray was saying, like, it takes privilege as well to be an ally, and so it's also reflecting on what privilege do you have that you're able to put forward, to be an ally. And if you're not able to speak up in a situation, always checking in on the person that was impacted, like recognizing that there's different ways to be an ally. So it doesn't always mean speaking up in a room if you don't have the privilege or opportunity to do so. Going to the person who experienced the harm, or whoever those people are, and checking in with them and saying, hey, I'm really sorry. That wasn't okay. I'm here for you, and I want to support you. So I don't think there's one way of doing it, um, but but that's kind of what I see as the difference.
I love what you're both saying. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that kind of fake allyship, right? Where for a long time, where in the DEI world, where people were doing things, and as soon as it became okay to not do it. Not okay, if you know what I mean. That people gave there was a permission given through government or others who say we're not going to do this anymore. How quickly so many corporations, different people pulled back funding on pride activities and different things, right? And I love what you both said, but Jake, with that whole thing, doing it when it's hard, right? Doing it for your values and aligning and standing up, not because you just want to fit in, or it's the popular thing to do in the moment, but it's the right thing to do to stand up and do that. So, I had a friend recently say his brother's son is trans, and we have a great parade. I live up in York. I love Toronto's parade too, but it's really long.
Yes.
I'm just lazy, right? Like it's really long. But York, there's a part where you come over a hill and then you just see the crowd is crazy and great, like, and that feeling of support and love when you come over that hill, saying this is a community that is behind you. It's just such a powerful thing
Mm.
to see, right? And I love and look forward to that every year, and it's just such a great moment. I think when you think about feeling the love, and if you're questioning, as we talked about earlier, do I have a community? You absolutely have a community. As you said, we're here, and we're not going away anytime soon, and it's continuing to grow. We leave on a question of hope for both of you, and this is a question of, and there's no right or wrong here, and that is, what are your hopes for the future of youth mental health in Canada? Like, if you were to kind of fast forward a few years, what would you say? I would be really happy if, and I'll throw it over. It's a small question, and
Yeah, small, such a small question.
Yeah. I think my hope for youth mental health in Canada is, you know, as we have kind of been talking about, building spaces where people can feel that their story and their voices matter. And I think, what we've discussed today in terms of like queer youth, also hoping that that can extend to other identities as well, like Black and Brown youth, like Indigenous youth, people who are gender nonconforming, people who are struggling at like different levels of like class and don't have the access to the same resources. I think uh, the dream for youth mental health, or if the aspirations, is that there is solidarity amongst the people who are struggling, who are oppressed with different aspects of their social location, that there's an understanding and more of an equitable approach to what are the barriers that different people face at different levels
Mm.
for who they are, and then being able to kind of neutralize that as much as possible, having people feel that they matter as much as they do and not feeling like and really maybe being able to open these discussions of these invisible barriers, even amongst youth, because you feel it. You feel it no matter how old you are. You grow up with it, and being able to like have these conversations early on or create that space early on would make, I think, a world of difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on Ray for ooh, add on from what Ray said. I think as they were saying, just a Canada where every young person feels seen and is able to get the support that they need, regardless of their identity, their race, their class, their background, whether they live in a small town or a large city. Um, that they all get the support that they need, and we're still a long way from that, as you know, I'm sure, Michael. So yeah.
Yes, a long way to go. But you know what? I say every time I'm on this podcast and I'm speaking with wonderful young people like yourselves is, man, we're okay. We're going to be okay because we have smart, wonderful, intelligent, passionate, driven young people like yourselves leading the way. My generation made a bit of a mess for you guys to clean up, but you're up to the challenge for sure. You have the talent to do so. Thank you so much for joining me today. You're so eloquent and beautifully spoken and passionate about this. Thank you for having the courage to share your own lived experience, what you've been through, what you've seen. And you're always welcome back on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Michael.
you.
As well, that was fantastic. I mean, we talk about, like, when you think about themes around mental health, we always think about when people feel alone, when people can't find their community, their people, when they feel isolated, when you feel like you're different and no one understands you, when you can't relate to others, all those different things, what it can do to your mental health, how it can make you feel like that cloud is never going to lift and move away. But when you, the power of finding your community, the power of being around people that are actively supporting you, and how that can lift you up and how we lift each other up. The power of one person saying, "You are not alone, and I care about you, and I love you," and that love doesn't come with if you are, attached to it. And we saw it today and much, much more. Two beautiful, wonderful, and smart people sharing their lived experience with us, as we do with so many wonderful young people across the country with Jack.org programs. I encourage you, if you enjoyed this podcast, to like it, rate it, and subscribe and share it as much as possible. Part of changing the world and changing our Canada to be where both Ray and Jake said, hey, this is where we want to be, is really amplifying that voice. This is Jack Amplified, and we'll see you next time.